step right there. Careful. Careful, speakers. So thank you, everyone, for coming. We really appreciate it. As was mentioned, I'm Jim Aloise, Director of PowerBridgeNY, as well as part of the teaching team for this Hacking for Energy class. Again, just want to welcome you to this beautiful room where the Pulitzer Prize is announced each time it's announced, so pretty historic room we're sitting in here. As was mentioned, we've got a live stream going. You already got the live stream etiquette. The Twitter handle is over here, so please do your tweeting. Just a couple of words of background for those of you who don't know the two programs very well. So PowerBridgeNY is a proof of concept center funded by the New York State Research and Development Authority, NYSERDA. We are a combination of 6 schools altogether: Columbia, NYU, City University of New York, Brookhaven National Lab, Stony Brook University, and Cornell Tech. And our job in that program is to get technologies out of the research labs at those institutions and into startup companies. We take the teams through a Lean Startup, Lean Launchpad program where they learn the virtues of going out and talking to customers rather than showing up at the marketplace with a finished product that they designed in their lab. It's very revealing and very rewarding to see the teams go through and learn all the things that they do in talking to customers. And that's the same thing we saw in this class. A little bit of a different starting point in Hacking for Energy, which came out of kind of a brainstorming session on what else could we do to extend our reach on PowerBridgeNY. And we came up with this idea of doing the Hacking for Energy class, which is modeled on what Stanford and Steve Blank did in Hacking for Defense. So the main difference being, instead of starting with the technology or the likely solution that you think you have in the lab, this is a starting point given to us by industry hosts. And we're going to hear a little bit from the industry hosts shortly. But basically, we went out to industry and asked them for their real live problems in energy to bring forth to the teams, let the teams come up with an initial idea, and then spend their 14-week class going through, starting with their starting point, again, talking to customers, and then coming out at the end of it 14 weeks later to see how things look. And that's what we're going to hear today. So today you're going to hear probably the biggest thing we want to hear from the teams is about their journey. And we do this in the I-Core-like programs as well. Tell us about how you went through this program and the things you learned and the changes you made. They're also going to tell us, what things look like at the end, but we really want to hear about the journey. We want to hear about the customer influence that they realize by going out and talking to customers to refine their idea. So that'll be a big part of what you're going to hear today. And it's really exciting because we see so often that the teams have a particular notion of how the solution could be formulated, and then they go talk to customers and they really come up with these revelations on how that really isn't what the marketplace wants, and then we see them change over the course of the weeks, and it's really rewarding to see that happen. So again, this is really more about a lessons learned pitch than a investor pitch. Some of these teams do hope to form companies. They might like to get investment. That's not the purpose today, but if you're an investor, feel free to talk to the teams about how you might like to work with them. We have one of those little credit card swipers. If you want to put down your first few million, we can take care of the transaction for you. So with that, I think I will turn it over to Julia for a few more comments. I'm sorry, Travis first. Travis, could you please come up and introduce yourself a little bit and about how you had a great time doing this class with us?
Something else I should say? Hi, everybody. My name's Travis Bradford. I run the energy. There is a step back here. I run the Energy and Environment program over at SEPA, and I also teach at various other schools and programs around here. Jim and Julia really originated the idea for this class, and I got really excited about it. My background prior to being a professor is in corporate finance, acquisitions, private equity, and public equity investment. And a lot in entrepreneurship, and I've helped start a lot of businesses and done so in various universities from Boston to Chicago and New York. So when presented with this idea, Hacking for Energy, where we really were trying to stimulate great ideas from companies and then trying to put teams of people with a really good game plan about how to sort of do a very quick startup on this, I got really excited. So my only real contribution to the class is to try to provide some perspective on how competition, innovation, and other system dynamics either create the opportunity or present obstacles to intervening or making change in the energy system. And I have to say, my conclusions after this is is that were the same as my initial sort of intuitions, which is it really was Jim and Julia, all the sponsors who brought problems, all of the advisors who came, who advised the individual teams, but really the students themselves to be able to work through these ideas very quickly, adapt and turn to the changing conditions of as they understood the problem and the circumstances that they found themselves trying to innovate in. So I'm just really, really proud of the I just tweeted this actually. I don't tweet very often, but I actually mention every single tweet that I've ever done. But I just tweeted how proud I am about how much progress you all have made in the last 13 or 14 weeks. I remember the very first class sessions in the very stifling and hot room where everyone, I think, was very frustrated. They were looking at very hard problems and trying to think, how are we going to make some progress? And I think if you look back at the journey that you've all made over the last semester, you really, you probably don't even remember that was only 13 or 14 weeks. And I think you guys should be really, really proud of what you've done. And I want to commend you all on the work you've done and thank all of the people who have helped you get to where you are today. So congratulations.
One last quick thing as Julia's walking up to the stage, just for those who didn't take the class, just to explain the format. So the first half of the class each week was the teams coming back and reporting out on their 10 or more customer interviews they did each week. That would be roughly half the class, and then the second half would be Travis talking about the things he just mentioned about the energy industry, so they would learn more about a broader perspective on the industry. So that first half of the class was, as Julia and I have been mentioned a few times, but we also had the rest of our teaching team, so I just want to introduce them very quickly. Maybe they can raise their hands or yell or whistle or something. Blake Stevens was part of our team. David Trillo, Andrea Nye, and Ivy Schultz. Thanks. It was great working with all you guys. Okay, your turn.
I will use the step. I am not 6 feet tall. So just following on what Travis was saying, the students have accomplished so much in this past semester, and we've been very proud of their accomplishments. And it's in large part due to all the support they've got from our teaching team, from their mentors, from their industry hosts. So I'd actually like to invite the industry hosts and mentors who are here to come up and say a few words about their team. So I believe we have Andrew Reed from Con Edison, Daniel Hulla from GE. Come on up, come on up. And any other mentors and industry hosts who are here? I think we were supposed to have Fernando and Joel, but they may not be here yet. Oh, there's Joel. Okay, great. So you guys can step up to the mic. I'll give it over to you. So I just want you guys to say a few words about your experience with the class, how it was working with the team. Just tell us a little bit about your thoughts.
Hi everyone, I'm Andrew Reed, Research and Development at Con Edison. R&D's focus is really to work with our internal customers to help manage, execute, shape research projects that adopt new technologies that address strategic needs in the company and operational sustainability. I focus mostly on the electric side of the business, and it was really exciting to participate in this class because, we do some of the same things every day with our internal customers in terms of identifying their pain points, identifying technology solutions that could meet their needs, doing some proof of concept demonstrations. And you get a different perspective when you work with the students and kind of see the new energy that comes into the room, really going after it, really hungry to kind of identify some needs, talk to everybody that they could. And I think they did a great job doing that. I think they broadened outside of our electric business and talked to a lot of suppliers, vendors. And where we see getting value out of this class is really kind of, first off, educating the next generation of people in the energy space that serve our energy needs or that potentially work for the company or in supporting the industry, potentially new technologies in the marketplace, new vendors. So vendor diversity is very important to us. And just kind of seeing what's coming out of the universities. There's different levels where you could work with your Fortune 500 companies like your GEs, but also with your startups and entrepreneurs. It's a new way of thinking, and we learn a lot from them as well. So really appreciate it to the PowerBridgeNY team, the teaching team at Columbia. Greatly appreciated, and thank you, and looking forward to the next year of cohorts. Thank you.
So first of all, many thanks for the invitation. It's wonderful to be here. My name is Daniel Huller. I'm with GE Ventures, and some familiar faces in the room. I've been with GE Ventures a fairly short amount of time. Before that was with National Grid, so I've been in the sort of the energy space for quite a while. So Jim and Julia asked me to say a few words, and the first thing I thought of when they asked me that was, what had I done to the team? I had asked them to solve essentially an impossible problem in 14 weeks, and then sort of think that that was a sensible thing to do. I think what the challenge, and they'll talk more about the electrification of transportation, specifically around charging infrastructure. It's an incredibly important issue. I hope we're at the dawn of the electrification of the entire transportation industry. It's incredibly important for decarbonization. But these guys really had to go to the ground truth. They really had to go to customers, to go to primary sources, talk to a lot of people within the industry, and I applaud the tenacity, I applaud the creativity, and I applaud the, I don't know if this is a word, stick-to-itiveness, which is kind of like tenacity, but they really kept going without a lot of direction sometimes with me if I was hard to get in touch with, and it's really been a fantastic thing to watch the sort of the plans develop and pivot, much like a startup would develop and pivot in real time. So it's been a pleasure to be involved in an important topic, and I look forward to the presentations today.
I'm going to try not to use the step either. So, hi, my name is Joel. I was one of the mentors for the class. I'm an engineer by training and a business person by necessity. I've had the good luck and the bad fortune to be involved with several startups, some of which succeeded in the past. My role was really just, I think, in my mind, was always to just speak to the students and dissuade them as much as humanly possible from actually starting a business. And if they could actually convince me that I was wrong, then they were at a good start. This will be maybe the third or fourth similar type class that I've been involved in. It's always really interesting to see the arc from the students from the beginning of the class when they're first tackling the problem to the end of the class when I think most groups are still tackling the problem, but tackling it in a very different way. And I think that's what I really like about this type of program and this type of class. It really teaches people, I think, a good rigorous framework in how to approach problems and how to try solving them. And I'm super excited to see where some of these students go. I think we could probably see a couple of really cool things from them in a few years. Thank you.
So we actually have some more comments from Diane Anderson, who is the industry host from the NYU Office of Sustainability for the Lion NYU team. She's on the live stream right now, and she sent me a few words that she asked me to read. She says, Team Lion NYU listened to our problem statement and investigated the situation. Through their interviews, experiences, and collective problem solving, they offered a solution that we had not considered. It was enlightening to have an outside set of eyes look at the problem and creatively solve for it. So thanks, Diane, for those comments, and thanks to the other, I think we have about 24 people on our live stream so far, so welcome if you're just joining us. And I would just like to pile on once again and say congratulations to the students. Over the past 14 weeks, they've collectively done 507 interviews, which is a huge number of interviews. Great job, guys. And now it is finally time for you to show us what you've learned. So I will invite Pow Yorker up. You are the first team up. So come on.
Go for it.
Hi, I'm Grace.
I'm Jason. Hi, I'm Pratik.
Hey everyone, I'm Vishal.
We are Team PowerBridgeNY. PowerBridgeNY.
So, as you saw the video, there are explosions going on in the city. Con Ed has thought about it, and they will be installing sensors in the underground infrastructure to monitor that.
But due to the capacity limitation of their battery, they can just get the data point once per day.
So, our job is to provide an energy harvesting solution which can provide a continuous power to the sensor. Well, we started with the idea that we're going to make a smart manhole cover with a solar PV on that, and on the very first day we realized that it's not feasible.
The surprise disappointment for me was that not everybody that we talked to was eager for our product.
Finding what you think is the greatest invention on Earth has very focused applications.
The most important thing is to make it very, very clear about the demand of customers.
The trials and tribulations revolved with a very steep learning curve that I think an entrepreneur underestimates every time he goes on this journey. So we had never dealt with a utility before. Suddenly we got to learn about how they update their technology, how they buy new things, what kind of problems that they have, and how hard they work to keep the lights on.
This team is awesome. We didn't know each other before, and I'm incredibly grateful for having spent countless hours with everybody. We conducted field surveys, we did site visits with manufacturers, we did lab work, we attended conferences.
This was one hell of a course. And in the end, we built something that works. And we can't wait to take this forward.
Good afternoon. This is Vishal, Grace, Jason. My name is Prateek Jain. We make up Team Power Yorker. And to give you a glimpse of what we're trying to solve, I let the morning news. For the people on the live stream, a podium for you. To give you a glimpse of the problem we're trying to solve, I let the morning news do some explaining.
Ice to form. Whoa, what just happened there? Looks like a manhole cover exploded. Now, you've probably seen video of this happening before, so what exactly is going on? So we have all this salt now that has been spread on the street. That, of course, seeps down into the sewer system. What is underneath that manhole cover? Well, we actually have all sorts of cables and gases. So first off, you have the salt that's eroding away at the insulation. Then you have all this gas down in our sewers. You have methane, you have hydrogen, think Hindenburg, and hydrogen sulfide. So once you have that salt that's eroded away at the insulation, you have live wires, of course that's heat, you get a spark mixing with the gas, and boom, you have an explosive environment. But let me stand back here, because those manhole covers, they can blast 50 feet into the air, and they can weigh anywhere from 100 to 300 pounds. So if you see one smoking, you obviously want to stay away. New York City estimates that they have more than 2,000 of these manhole incidents a year.
So if you're woken up with the morning news saying that, I can imagine that the PR relationships department of Con Edison is having a rough morning as well. So let's just put it this way. Con Ed is spending a lot of money to solve this problem. They have tried so many innovative R&D approaches. And so when they came to us, we, of course, as naive students thought, we have the perfect solution. We're going to fix this right away. So we said, why don't we, in the world of smart goods, go put smart manholes in place of those wrought iron, steel, rusted structures all over the city. These smart manholes could be solar powered. They could have all kinds of sensors. They could monitor traffic. They could do all kinds of amazing things. And we'd solve the problem. And I thought, we could build an MVP where we put a few sensors on a manhole and then call it done. We've built such systems before, not a big deal. So we said, hey, we'll conceive an MVP and we'll go from there. Then the course mantra happened. Get out of the building. And then we went for our very first interview with the client. This, you just heard Andrew Reed and Joe Zhang, the engineer who's been working on this problem for a while. They let us know that it isn't as easy as we thought, very gently at first. And they explained to us that it isn't like you can just replace a few manholes and the problem goes away. There are more than few manholes in the city. So to give you a glimpse of it, Grace and I went out to do a survey of the manholes in the city, and we hoped to get 100 manholes surveyed and articulated in one afternoon, and we hit 200 in 1 hour. So the problem is slightly bigger than that. So we went back to them and said, what exactly do we need to do? What do you need for us to solve this problem? And they said, we want to get ahead of the problem before something blows up, before something goes wrong. And it isn't just about going and putting nanomaterials on the wires or anything like that. We need data to tell us before something is going to happen. So we said, okay, what's the environment? And the environment is an area which has rats, there's water in the vicinity, it's a dingy environment, and as the newscaster explained it, it's a little scary of an environment as well. So the big challenge was, what kind of a technology stack would solve the data problem? And in that sense, it's just a simple sensor package, right? Essentially, you need a few sensors that are transmitting the data out, that'll go to the cloud, and if anything is about to happen, it should send you a text message, right? Ideally, you just put a few sensors, and then everything is solved. But there's a problem in the equation, because this isn't you putting a few sensors on the top of a building. This is you trying to put it under a foot of concrete and metal wire with all kinds of disturbance and the company of rats and fumes. So we realized from Joe's comment, it isn't just about powering some sensors. The problem is that for Con Edison to have these sensors in place throughout the city, there are 250,000 manholes. And if the battery dies on one of these sensors, then they're going to have to go from being the utility that keeps our lights on to being the utility that replaces the battery every month, which is not the business they want to be in. So they said to us, go solve our power problem. And it sounds so easy. We're a bunch of renewable energy freaks. We're like, every problem in the world can be solved by renewable energy. We'll just go put some new technology in there and everything will be okay. So we said, hey, there are so many possible solutions. You could put in a bigger battery. That went away because right now the battery is supposed to last 8 years. Even if you triple the size, you wouldn't get a lot of data out of a battery that's the size of a concrete brick. We said, hey, we could put some solar panels. We could do all kinds of interesting things with it. So we went out and did a survey of what the manholes are situated like. And within that hour of finding 200 of them, we found 40% of them are under parking spots. So there goes all the aspiration of having a solar panel on top of a manhole cover. And you definitely can't put a little wind turbine on the road. If your car is parked on top of it, nobody's walking on it, let alone driving on the manhole. So there's no vibration harvesting that's feasible. We discussed this idea of harnessing radio waves. And people said, you can't even harness radio waves next to a radio tower to power such devices. Forget about inside of a concrete structure. And then we said, the wires have to be hot. So we talked to so many people within Con Ed to talk about the wires being hot. And they were like, yeah, of course. But what about the winter? And we said, wait, ambient temperature versus hot wire, you still need a lot of temperature delta to be able to pull this energy out. So we were a little grounded, let alone as exuberant as we were when we started. But we knew there had to be a solution, right? And if you go back to the problem, there's power everywhere inside the structure. And we realized, hey, there's power everywhere in all these lines, and it's what Con Ed has been talking about from the very beginning. Can we go harvest the electricity that's flowing through the wires through the simple idea of just coupling with the induction field in those structures? And we figured, let's go try it. So, of course, we went back to the team and we said, we figured out the solution. We've also understood the problem. Let's go build something. But we said, no, first. The course said, no, let's go first develop some insights about the customers. So we did that. And we thought every city in the world will have this problem, right? Every cold city, Boston, Detroit, Michigan, everywhere would have this problem. Turns out, no. Turns out New York's infrastructure was built 100 to 60 years ago, while the latest infrastructure in Beijing and Shanghai was built 30 years or so ago, and they designed around it. Most other cities don't have assets that are over 50 years old under the ground. London, for example, has pipes that run under the city that protect all these utility infrastructure. So turns out Con Ed is unique. And it also happens to be the world's most resilient grid. So as Andrew Reid tried to put it, whenever we have a technological challenge, we go find a solution. And if a solution doesn't exist, we make it happen. We found ourselves in that situation of a unique customer problem. But we found some more. We said, excuse me, what about the other suppliers in the industry? What about the people making relays and protection equipment, et cetera? And we went to their factory and we asked them. They were super intrigued about serving a whole new problem segment. And so they said, oh, the underground wire problem. We built something for that. All you have to do is take one of these devices and cut into the wire that's underground, and you can plug in and get a new power port, just like your wall outlet in the building. And I said, does anybody use that? They said no. And we noticed it was stacked in a dustbin because nobody wants to cut into the wires underground. So that's, even an established company over 20 years old didn't figure that one out. And then we talked to some asset managers in different utilities, and they let us know a keen insight. They said, you know, we love to be the first ones to be second. We won't be your first customer, but if you get Con Ed on board, we will race to be your second customer, which is wonderful, right? Now we have to just get Con Ed on board. So we went back to them and we said, hey, if we solve this, will you make sure we have a chance at the contract? And they've been wonderfully gracious. They said, look, we don't want to be replacing batteries all day long. So if you solve this, we will think about putting in a contract requirement that any device that goes underground has to be able to accept power from a unique source like yours. And so we said, let's go hunt out everybody who's in the space. One of our competitors in the space was building a solution similar to this for a completely different utility down south. And we called them up and said, hey, we notice you are solving a problem similar to the one we're solving. We're working with Con Ed. You want to chat some more? And they said, you're working with Con Ed? I'll see you on Wednesday. And very quickly, he brought us a sample of what they can do. We learned that the development cycles of this product industry are not as fierce and as quick as we expected. If somebody has a sample of a similar product, we expected them to outright say, yeah, we are going to customize the solution and solve the problem. But they didn't. They said, we'll consider the problem that Con Ed is having. And we said, wow, the industry space is not as competitive as we thought. And the last one was, before we got dejected about all these other cities not having the exact same problem, we talked to a company that's solving similar problems for Con Ed as a pilot right now. And we finally got a meeting with this guy. And he looked at us and he says, you know, if you can make this happen, all of the other pilots that I'm doing in other places, everything about that game changes. I can suddenly say to them, hey, not just can you monitor this once in a while, you can monitor this property all the time. And I said, do you have other customers for this? He says, I can't tell you about all the customers who want this. And so our customer discovery journey went from slightly unsure to pretty certain that there's a problem worth solving. So here were our insights, right? The utilities are conservative. They're by design risk averse, and that's good. But there are lots of opportunities in the utility infrastructure because everybody wants our networks to be resilient. And if we can make that possible, there's a lot of problems to be solved. And essentially, lots of money to be made. So we went and we said, all right, let's go build something. We went to our mentors and our teaching team and we said, all right, we want to go build a prototype. And Julia said no. Hands down. She said, why are you already doing product development? We said, because we understand the problem. She says, no, but is there a business here? So we went back again and again, but eventually we said, all right, let's go figure out the economics of this business. Very first thing we learned was that you can't just sell to a utility. We found some sales agents who said, yeah, you're going to walk into a headquarters and say, yes, you are in charge of the lives of 10 million people in the city. Try this new product we've developed. It's not how it works. So apart from the certification that Travis was talking to us about, we learned that there are sales channels that are unique to specific industries, including this one. And so we learned about the economics of a commission-based sales structure that we would have to develop, and we already made some relations in that department. We also learned that utilities don't go develop each product itself, they go contract out solutions. And so we'd have a sensor aggregator layer, and so we went and made some relations with sensor aggregators like the one Rich Patton worked for. And we said, all right, how would we actually go about getting these customers? And every other team in this classroom was talking about Facebook ads. And we said, no Facebook ads. For us, it turns out we need trade shows, magazine ads in specific illustrative magazines about electronics, Distributech, which was a conference that we hope to go to soon, and lots more. So I am an MBA student. I had to do a discounted cash flow model. We learned that at scale, we'd make lots of money. And we basically learned that, fine, maybe it's time to do some product development. Our MVP aspirations went from, hey, let's go build something that already exists out there, to let's build a spec sheet because it's looking very complicated, to, okay, this is what the spec sheet looks like. Okay, this is all we needed. And then Conrad said, we don't want a PowerPoint. We want a product. So we went and said, all right. And essentially the goal is to get 2.5 watts of power. And our first prototype, we got about twice what they were getting with their earlier product. And they said, not so great. You're still about 100 times away from what you need to get to. And we said, okay, we'll figure something out. So we went and tried a bigger prototype. And we thought, hey, according to our calculations, this should work. But it turns out that it didn't quite work. We learned a lesson about life. Size matters, but not only size matters. And you know, we were surprised. All of our calculations were saying something should work here, but it wasn't. And between the 4 of us, we have 6 engineering degrees. So this better work. And Vishal tried some magic circuitry. He'd been reading all these papers, and we tried some impedance matching, and that happened to be the secret sauce. And suddenly our results went from 100 times away from the goal to a few % short of the goal in 14 weeks. Now we're on to something, and we're pretty excited. From my understanding, Joe is pretty excited at Con Ed. And if we've gotten so far in a few weeks, with a little bit of prototyping some more, we think we can take this prototype to the next level. We can build out the rest of the circuitry, we have the skills, and with our amazing mentors and the support that PowerBridge has given us, and with this attitude of no, go validate every single assumption, we think we can actually solve this problem, which gives me a lot of hope. So, to all of you guys, stay tuned. More to come soon.
So we're going to give a few comments, but first, if there's a question from the audience, we're happy to take one question, if anyone's got one.
I'll take that as a no.
Looks like you guys got off the hook. No tough questions from the audience. Okay, Ivy, you have a few comments?
Sure. So you guys did a great job. I think that one of the things that really shines through in this is that you embrace the process of the customer interviews and taking them seriously, even though I think it was maybe against your intuition or against sort of the more interesting parts of building the prototype.
Also, we didn't have a choice.
There's always a choice.
No, but the seriousness with which you took those interviews was commendable. And then I think that you really learned a lot about the problem, and you portrayed that in a way that was understandable to us. And I think that that's something that not all teams do in this space. I think that people in the audience today and the whole team really now have a clearer sense of what might be going on with manholes, especially in New York City, why that's unique. I certainly learned a lot from you, and I appreciate that. My question to you as a team in terms of what's next is what are you doing tomorrow? Or after you finish your exams?
So, in the middle, when in the middle, when the prototypes weren't doing so well, we were looking at Vishal and saying, is this worth it? And Vishal was like, this is going to work. And we're like, all right. And yesterday, these results came out. He just sent us a text message saying, guys, I think we should talk. And so yesterday, our plans were a little bit sketchy, but tomorrow our plans look like we're going to chase this down some more. There are lots of interested parties in the space who, when we tell them the type of problem we're trying to solve, they immediately want to help us. So all of this product development we've done has been totally and utterly free. And yeah, the product is going to end up being more expensive than Conrad was initially expecting, but the capability of what they currently have is going to go up by 100-fold. So what we're trying to develop here is kind of radical, and we think that's worth chasing.
Thanks. So I'll just pile on to that. So I think you guys are a great team. You're very coachable. You actually listened to me. And let me tell you, that's rare in my life. So thank you. Thank you for listening to me. No, you always have a choice. That's the thing. I know you're graded on this, but you really embraced it. It wasn't like, oh, you're doing this because we have to do this. Someone told us to do it. I think you guys really bought into the methodology and started getting excited. And you can tell that from your video and your presentation. There's so many pictures of site visits that you guys did. You really made a point of getting out of the building physically and not just mentally and talking to people out of the building. You went on a number of site visits, and I think you learned a lot from those. You saw things like the bucket of energy harvesters off into the corner that no one was using, that you never would have seen otherwise if you were just talking to that person on the phone. And so I think you guys really understood that, and you really put a lot of time into going out to New Jersey and all these other places to see people. So I really, really congratulate you guys, and I look forward to seeing what you guys do next. So congratulations.
Thank you. Hey, can I just say that every time we were trying to do a trip, even if our Uber wasn't on time or something like that, we would text Julia, and Julia would fix the problem right then and there. So we really appreciate how on top of this you guys were. This was fantastic.
Of course.
Thank you.
Okay, next up, Eve.
They asked us to help figure out a way to speed up the electric vehicle infrastructure build out. Now, this is a really challenging feat. First, the industry is currently facing the chicken and the egg problem. Do you build out the electric vehicle infrastructure before there's a large amount of electric vehicles on the road? Or do you wait until there's a large amount of electric vehicles purchased and then build up infrastructure to accommodate it? Now, there are many players in the industry currently trying to solve the same problem as us, and they've been doing it for 10 years or more. So how can we, a team of Columbia students, be able to solve this problem? Well,
generally, the methodology lets us generate business model based on our own hypothesis. We will put those hypotheses in business model canvas and engage with our professors and mentors every week basis. To test our hypothesis, we need to conduct customer interview at least 10 per week. We interview with EV manufacturer, EV infrastructure manufacturer, EV drivers, utilities, our potential competitors, and also professors in this area. At the end of the semester, we have conducted 103 customer interviews. Can you believe that? 103!
After 104 interviews, we gathered few key insights. A frustration that we came across time and again was that multifamily EV owners don't have access to public chargers. One problem that we came across was that EV car sellers and the manufacturer don't consider multifamily homeowners their key customer segment. Another key insight was that there is not enough data in this business. People want data on the charging patterns, which is still lacking.
So our business model is to provide fast DC charging services. So we have different subscription models. The Platinum plan, in which you can charge as much as you want per month. The Gold plan, in which you can get 15 to 20 different charges a month. And the pay-as-you-go model, in which people who want to be flexible about their charging needs can come and charge when they want. So how we differentiate our service from any other is that we have a specific charging scheduling application in which people can plan their charging activities and charge at the exact times that they want, as long as they have booked it beforehand. And we will build chargers alongside local amenities like Starbucks, maybe the grocery shop, the laundry shop, the barber shop, and have them all listed. Each and every charger will be located in such an area and listed online in such a manner that people will know the nearby amenities, so they can choose the charger according to what they need to have done that very day.
Hope you guys enjoy the video. So hello everyone. We are here to tell you our story about how we're gonna take charge of electric vehicles in urban area based on our solution InCharge. First, let me introduce my teammate. So this is Margaret. She cares about this project because she's not willing to see her homeland, Long Island, below sea level. And this is Asta. She cares about our project because she wants to construct more environment-friendly building in the future. And this is Ali. He cares about our project because he wants to roll out more environment-friendly policy to promote the development of clean energy. And me, how? I'm here because I'm from Beijing, a place you cannot see beyond like 0.1 miles from time to time due to severe air pollution. And we have Karen Morris as our mentor and Daniel Hula as our industry host from GE Venture. The problem is, are there ways to use technology to develop new business model to speed up the rollout of infrastructure in advance of market expansion? So, based on our primary research, we already know that the charging, you want to build up charger, you need like a big upfront investment compared with like the revenue you can generate per charge. So we think we need to couple the charging with other service. So this is our timeline. I think you still remember that we have conducted 103 customer interviews during this semester. All these interviews lead us to a fantastic journeys. And now I just cannot wait to share you with the beautiful view during our trip. Here is our first stop. So based on our initial customer interviews, we already knew that the EV drivers are actually willing to help the increase of EV infrastructure adoption. Based on that, we proposed a garage sharing business model to capture this need. Similar as Airbnb model, EV driver can have more access to the EV infrastructures if they are willing to use other EV owners' home garage. And after we establish this market widely, we will build more chargers in the common area as well. In this business model, our customers are EV drivers who need emergency charge, who live in multi-family home, and who are on a road trip. However, after 2 weeks of interview, we invalidate our hypothesis. We learned that first, single-family EV owners are not incentivized to charge outside. And second, there are only a few people that want to share their home garage with others due to safety concern. And third, Even for the people that are willing to share their garage with others, only 0 to 1 customer will visit their home per year. But there are also like some other findings led us to move forward. First, we heard that a lot of EV drivers, they are complaining that the public EV infrastructure is unreliable, and they don't want to spend a lot of time on the maintenance and installation process because it's complicated. Packed with all our previous findings, we moved to our another stop, which is our first pivot to operation and maintenance business model. In this business model, we want to help public charging hosts retain and grow customers through EV chargers, and also we want to solve the EV drivers' complaint about the unreliability of the current EV infrastructure. So through the diagram, you can see that the public infrastructure owner will pay us for the O&M surveys, and we will do the maintenance job proactively. So there are two key hypotheses related to this business model. First is a public infrastructure owner. They care about maintenance because they want to generate more revenue from the chargers. And second is institutions, actually, they don't want to spend a lot of time on the maintenance. From our first stop to the second, our target customer changed from EV drivers to institutions with EV chargers like Walmart, Whole Foods, and utilities. However, customer interviews contradict with hypothesis again. So we found that a lot of retailers like Whole Foods Iguana, actually they don't care about the downtime of the chargers because their incentive to install electric vehicles infrastructure is purely for green image. Furthermore, maintenance is also not a complicated process because the chargers, they already have their warranties and it can cover the charger for at least 3 years. And second, 90% of the failure are software related, which means it can be solved simply by reboot remotely. Last but not the least, utility actually don't care about the downtime because they don't own the chargers. But will never allow us to end up here. And then my teammate Margaret will walk you through the rest of our journey.
Thanks, Hal. So you can imagine after 2 pivots, we felt like we hit a dead end in our process. And we were wondering where we could go from here. So we actually looked back at our previous customer interviews to evaluate maybe a problem that we hadn't addressed yet. And one of the things we found from some of our previous customer interviews was that multifamily homeowners who own electric vehicles are facing a significant problem in the market. So we looked to further address this or further explore this problem and see if it was worth addressing as our third business model. And so we talked to some electric vehicle owners who lived in multifamily homes, but we also heard from multifamily buildings who might potentially have electric vehicle charging stations. And we found that a lot of the people who we talked to have a lack of awareness on the multifamily building side of what electric vehicle charging stations can bring to their building in terms of value. Some of them were even afraid that electric vehicle charging station might explode in their garage and therefore did not want to install it. And we also heard from car manufacturers who are selling electric vehicles. One of them said that they specifically target single-family homes and not multifamily homes. So after conducting our first initial round of interviews, we figured that this is a good problem to address and we should focus on solving the problem for multifamily homeowners accessing electric vehicle charging infrastructure. But after talking to a few more electric vehicle owners, we found that the biggest problems for them were the access to chargers near their home and near their work, and the reliability of these chargers. Maybe someone else was using it during the time that they needed. So we sought to provide a solution that would give access fast charging stations near their home, workplace, or other convenient areas. And our business model would work in that they would subscribe to our service, just like you would subscribe to Netflix or another subscription model, and then you can reserve your charging time online, and then access a public charger near you that you could access to charge your car for a half hour, an hour, or more, however much you need for your day. And this model, after testing it with customers, we found gave EV drivers more confidence in the ability to own their electric vehicle and find charging, more flexibility in their schedule, the ability to actually save time in getting to a charger, and will help them with the reason why they bought their electric vehicle in the first place, which is to reduce their greenhouse gas footprint. So with some even more confidence now after conducting more customer interviews, we wanted to quantify this problem and also create an actual product that we could test with customers. So we administered a survey to send out to electric vehicle drivers to test this problem. And we actually got really great responses. We were not expecting to get over 150 survey responses. We sent the survey out through electric vehicle user groups. But some interesting things that we found were that over 25% of customers, electric vehicle owners, don't have access to a private charger where they live. And of that 25%, a third of those customers don't have any charging capabilities where they live at all. So they 100% rely on public charging infrastructure. And I think the most useful insight that we got out of this was after we followed up with the multifamily homeowners who had electric vehicles, all of them said that when looking at purchasing or renting an apartment or condo, an electric vehicle charging station is a must-have, or at least a high priority. So this, we thought, was something that was not being addressed by multifamily home buildings based on our conversations with them. And so we created our minimum viable product with a subscription service where customers could select which option they want to pay for monthly, and then find a charger near them, select the charger, and schedule a time that works for them so they can always be sure that the charger will be available when they arrive. So now that we have tested and gathered information on our minimum viable product, we need to figure out how we're actually going to access these customers. One of the things that we found through conducting our customer discovery was that electric vehicle owners in multifamily homes are actually really hard to find. There's only a few in each building, and there's not even that many in New York City because there's not that many people with cars in New York City. And throughout the rest of the country, they're pretty spread out. So one of the most successful ways we found customers was through these user groups. The electric vehicle owners have a lot of enthusiasm, we found, around their cars, so they're willing to participate in these, and that's how we thought we can get our product out there. Also through car dealerships, especially the ones that are not targeting the multifamily homes yet, we could use them as an outlet to access these multifamily homeowners who are looking for buying a new car. And then one of the other things was new construction. In some states, it's actually mandatory now to install electric vehicle charging stations in a new condo or an apartment building. But those that don't have it can provide an advantage to them if they are looking to get new customers. And as Hal mentioned earlier, and our industry host reminded us constantly as well, is that there are very high capital costs in installing fast charging stations. And we don't think that we could get revenue or enough revenue from just the subscription services that we would provide to customers. So we also would look to other ways that we can get revenue, including municipal subsidies, advertisements, and eventually aggregating the data that we have on these charging stations and selling it. But in addition to the upfront capital costs of electric vehicle charging stations, there's also things that we need to consider monthly, which are electricity costs and demand charges. And demand charges especially are something that we wanted to consider when looking at our average cost per charge. So we did an analysis on the average cost per charge, and based on the utilization rate and the demand charge in the area. Up here is only an example if the demand charge is at $14 a kilowatt, but this would vary by region and by utility service. And then we looked at the utilization of the charger. So as you can see, the higher the utilization, the lower the average cost per charge is. So we think this is something that we would need to consider as we price our subscription models in different regions. And this class, even though it ends today, is not the end of our journey. We look to continue to solve this problem because we think that there's a huge disconnect between the multifamily residents that have electric vehicles and the buildings today. And we think that in order to bridging this gap will allow the electric vehicle market to grow and will also allow for more clean energy technology to be adopted. So we're looking to continue this summer and are looking forward to working with the rest of you guys as we continue. And last, I just wanted to bring it back to how introduced us earlier and why we're all here today. We are all here because we want to protect the environment and reduce the effects of global warming by the advancement of clean energy technology, and we hope that In Charge is a signpost in the right direction. Thank you.
Is there any questions from the audience? We'll allow one.
Go, Abraham.
Go to the microphone.
Okay.
There you go. That'll work.
Yeah, quick question. Just could you elaborate how your business model differentiates itself from charging infrastructure providers or networks that already exist, like ChargePoint or Greenlaw?
Well, how we really differentiate ourselves is that, first of all, we look at customer needs. So if somebody drives through a charge point station, first of all, sometimes the infrastructure has been reported to be broken. We focus on real-time delivery. The second part of the problem is knowing that you'll get your charge, which is why we built a scheduling application, so that you will know that if you go down to that charger at that point in time, it's going to be there just for you. The second part of the problem is something that we did not address too well in our presentation. But Margaret talked about it when she spoke about utilization. You have to bring the utilization rates up. One way around that is to build these chargers in such an area where people would be doing the regular tasks anyway. So maybe 3 or 4 amenities, maybe a Trader Joe's, a Starbucks, a laundry shop, a barber shop, located all around your charger, so that you know that once you'd be going to that charger, you don't have to sit in your car for an hour. You can do something else. And these are two propositions that we have. But at this point in time in this space, I must say that to find a real differentiation is about winning the game. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that question. So I'll start off the comments from the panel here. Just say, nice job, guys. Really enjoyed the energy of your presentation. Love the excitement about getting over that 100 interview count to the 103. So many of the teams were like, oh, we can't find 100 customers to talk to, especially if they're in a kind of a B2B environment. They think they got to find 100 companies, and no, that's not it at all. It's 100 people to go talk to, and you learn so much by talking to different people that are potentially your customers. So great to see that you made that goal and that you were very excited about it. We knew you'd make it. Like to see the way you pivoted over time. You went down a path, you thought you had something and hit a dead end and pivoted. And what I really like, and this may sound really sadistic, but I like the fact that you got to such a low point because I think and we see this with a lot of teams in the different programs we do. You get to this low point and then you come out of it and you're so much more rewarded by knowing that you're on a path that really makes sense, and it's because you went out and talked to customers and you were wrong about things, and you learned that from listening to your customers, and that's really great to see. And then also like to see that you realize that you've got what not every team has is a two-sided market that's a little bit more complicated than some of the other offerings, and you recognize that and you'll deal with it. So that's good to know that you understand that and know how to go after that. And then my last comment, I'll turn the microphone over, is it's great to see you guys are going to continue this after the class. That's wonderful to see. So thanks.
So just to pile on what Jim was saying, I think your team definitely has the most pivot award. And I think that really reflects your perseverance. As Daniel mentioned at the start, he presented you guys with a whopper of a challenge, which was basically to solve the chicken and egg problem with EVs and the charging infrastructure. And that's certainly a daunting problem. One of the things I was most impressed by you guys was how you were able to frame your hypotheses. You were able to say, okay, this is our idea, and these are the things that we believe are true. If they're true, we have a business. If they're not true, we don't have a business. And you're very good at distilling down your entire business to a few hypotheses that you could go out and test. I was also very impressed by your ability to take that large problem and start slicing it up a little bit and figuring out, okay, well, we don't need to solve the entire problem, but maybe we can find a little smaller problem within this big problem that we can go after. And I think you guys really did that by focusing on multifamily homeowners, realizing that they don't have personal garages to charge their cars in overnight. So charging infrastructure is a challenge for them. So here, how can we go build a solution that really meets their needs, their specific needs? And I think you guys really did that, so congratulations.
I would just reiterate, I mean, I think we had several conversations over the course of the semester. The pivoting was great. I think it was really cool, and you presented today, and I remember having the conversation with you. At one point, you went back and you like looked at your notes. You're like, did we miss something? You know, what did you see? And I think there was the 1 week where you kind of uncovered the multifamily home issue, and it was an issue on a lot of sides, and that was really great. And then I also liked, I don't know if you think like your pivot map or timeline in your presentation, which helped us as an audience be like, okay, we're at the end now, so this is the one that you landed on. So that was really nice, because like, I think in the beginning you're like, okay, what's next? And you're like, okay, we're at the conclusion. So that was just a nice, elegant way to present that. So that was really cool. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Lion NYU.
Hi everyone, we are team Lion NYU and I'm Ronak.
I'm Jonathan. I'm Chen Li.
I'm Aaron.
We started this course with the aim of helping NYU to achieve carbon neutrality on their campus by 2040. They wanted to upgrade their shop vehicles to low emissions vehicles. However, they didn't know the best options to take, so they asked for our help.
At first this project looked like an optimization problem to us. We thought there were multiple problems like charging, parking, battery management, but as we started talking to more customers, we realized that it's not really a fleet management or a consulting problem. There are already players who do all these things. So we started looking at more options that we could work on.
We continued to talk to several electric utility vehicle manufacturers and discovered that everyone wanted a bulk order. And they wouldn't agree to produce just 4 electric utility vehicles for one customer. But one of them asked us, why not we aggregate all of this together? So now we are facing 2 problems. One is to buy the cars in bulk, as well as the big upfront cost for most universities. The other one is to keep the customers to stay with us. So how we're going to deal with this? Well, why don't we lease out all these vehicles to universities with added services? And we have actually received good feedbacks from universities with a goal to switch their vehicles into EVs, and that provides us a good business model.
I think the most important thing we learned through this class is the process of launching a successful startup via the Launchpad Central we've been using. It provides a very clear and detailed outline for first-time entrepreneurs like us to follow. The breakdown of the business model canvas clarifies which key components a startup needs to address as the formation of the business model progresses. This class has also encouraged and pushed us to reach out to industry professionals and conduct informative and effective interviews. It has taught us what questions to ask and how to ask them.
So hi everyone, we are Team Lion NYU, and my name is Ronak. So our business thesis is streamlining universities' access to electric utility vehicles for helping them achieve sustainability. So this is like the current business model we have, but it changed like multiple times. But before even changing the first business model, our team member changed, as you can see. And so this is our current team, myself, Ronak, Chen, Jonathan, Aaron, our mentor, Fernando, and industry host, Diane and Jane. So basically, when we went to NYU for the first time, they said that they want to exceed the sustainability goals they have. So their target was to be carbon neutral by 2040. And they wanted us to specifically focus on the sustainable transportation problem. So they had like a lot of shop vehicles. They wanted to transform them to electric vehicles. And they had certain questions for us. They wanted us to tell them what type of vehicles they should buy, where should be the parking for these vehicles, and where should be the charging. Now, me being an engineer, I was like, yes, let's optimize this problem. Let's have an app, Indian engineer. So we thought about doing a software tool. Chen had some experience with battery management, so he said, yeah, let's do battery plus apps. So this is how basically we started with our model. So we started talking to more universities and asked them what really can we do for them? What are the values that we can bring for them? So first was usually reducing emissions, which has been the key theme for sustainability officers. The second one was green branding. So like NYU told us that this will help them improve their brand image, having greener vehicles, roaming them around throughout the city. So that was another value proposition that we thought of. Resiliency was a very important theme that we had never thought of. So during the Hurricane Sandy, what happened was for 4 or 5 days, people couldn't access gasoline. And so their vehicles weren't really working. While NYU had a cogeneration plant in their university, so they thought it'll be a good idea to have electric vehicles so that they could use this cogeneration plant to have sustainability. And we also talked to other universities on the West Coast, and those who were shifting to electric vehicles told us the same thing. So it was a very interesting find for us that people are actually looking for resilient solutions. Cost reduction was not really a value proposition, but to a lot of universities, they said that transportation system transformation, transport system transformation at this point of time is not a key for them to reduce emissions because the emissions are very less in comparison to other things. But if it reduces the cost, they'll be willing to do it. Now we use these value propositions to see where can we look into the markets. So basically, we thought of having any organization that'll have a fleet with a size of 5 to probably 50 vehicles and have these utility vehicles where we can move. So it was a very niche market. So we thought of looking for national labs, airports, parks, and theme parks, which will have certain things and these fleet vehicles. So first minimum viable product for us was to give them a sheet or a tool that'll have all these things like route optimization, what kind of vehicles they can purchase, how much emissions they would reduce, and cost benefit analysis. Our market, we assume to just do the business in New York State for now. It was more like total available market was 2.6 billion. Serviceable market for us was fleet size 5 to 50, and these organizations, it came out to be around $177 million. The obtainable market for us was more or less like New York Mayor's Carbon Challenge institutions, and we wanted to just focus on them. There were like 18 institutions, and their market size was around $35 million. So because none of us had any idea of how the procurement works, how do people buy these vehicles, we started getting out of the building, looking at what vehicles do people have. So they had these smaller vehicles, like CCNY had this smaller vehicle, and most universities, even NYU, had this smaller vehicle. But it was like they had no big vehicles that were electric. We went to Columbia, we went to FIT, we had multiple trips at NYU. And then if we were going on the road and saw a DHL vehicle going with a sign of electric vehicle written over there, we would just run to talk to the driver over there. So it was fun going out. So while talking to these people, we realized that the total infrastructure that really matters to us is basically like the Office of Sustainability, the President's Office, Transportation Office, the Procurement Office, and the Facilities Department. So in different organizations, different people make decisions. Definitely President is the most important because he sets up goals for the University of Sustainability as well as provides them budget. Then in certain institutions, procurement officers were very important. Like in the public institutions, there'll be a single tender that'll be signed and everyone will have to buy those vehicles only. So these were the main key players we decided, and the head of these departments were the people that we started talking to. There were some influencers as well, like the government policy. like the New York mayors has been pushing these institutes to have more sustainable solutions. At the same time, certain vendors used to reach out to these universities telling them about electric vehicles. So this was more or less our ecosystem, the people we wanted to talk to. So we did total 98 interviews in this niche market, and as you can see, these are the people we talked to. So facilities personnel was definitely, because we were looking into the utility markets, they were the most important people. And then we talked to a lot of vendors, fleet managers, and also went to institutes like DCAS and other government offices. So this was more or less our journey. We did pivot twice. The first model, as I told you, was more like a consulting tool to help these universities. The second one was a database that will help connect vendors and the customers. And the third one was a leasing model that will have not only the car leasing, but also certain added services which were required by these universities. Now, to dig deep into how we made this journey, Jonathan will come and help you understand the same.
All right. Thanks, Ronak. So as Ronak mentioned, the first solution we came up with was this idea of having a consultancy business. And we talked to a lot of universities in New York, and one of the first roadblocks we encountered was that fleet management companies already do exist. So we weren't sure what kind of competitive advantage we could gain over these people. And furthermore, after talking to a couple of universities, we realized that enthusiasm for upgrading their utility vehicles was actually pretty low. So then we decided, okay, consultancy or fleet management service isn't really a scalable and repeatable business model for us. And at the same time, we also talked to one or two vendors at that point in time, and we realized that they faced the same frustrations that we did, that finding the right person to talk to within a university, because there are so many people involved and so many vehicles, is very hard to target specific customers. So we were wondering whether there was a service that maybe we could connect the vendors on one side with the sellers on the other side. And so we came up with this idea of having a database where we would put all the vehicle information and as well as all the customer information. So we talked to a lot of vendors to see if they would be willing to have, or this service would help them, and what problems they were facing in getting customers. So we felt that this database idea targeted the pain points of both our buyers and sellers. So for our buyers who like the information on vehicles, they could easily get all the information they need from this one database. And for the sellers who were having problems finding the right point of contacts within the organizations, they could easily target the right customers. So our problem with the database idea was that after we went through this whole business model and we were thinking about how our revenue streams would come about, in terms of getting, keeping, and growing customers, it's very easy to get customers, but we found it would probably be really difficult to keep and grow customers. The other problem we faced was that we didn't have a lot of vendors that sold the types of vehicles we were looking for. And furthermore, as we mentioned in our video, the vendors that were available, they generally wanted to buy, they wanted the sellers to, they wanted bulk purchases because of better economies of scale. So this business model also got consigned under the not repeatable and scalable business. So we found, so finally we decided on a leasing model, and I'll talk a bit about how we arrived at that. And to test our leasing model, we talked to a lot more schools, a lot more vendors, and really tried to suss out their major pain points. So we went back to our value proposition canvas, and we looked at, we thought, okay, maybe now we can focus back on the buyers because there weren't that many vendors we had. And what we kept hearing was, we would love to have greener vehicles, but the upfront costs are really high. And we heard this from people like CCNY and Hamilton College. And another concern that people had was, can these EVs do the job that we want them to do? We heard from one of the New York Mayor's Challenge people that previously, a couple of years back, there had been already a company that supplied electric vehicles for some schools, and they had a very terrible experience because back then the technology was not so good. So there was already a bad impression of EVs in the market. So we condensed this down into two major pain points that we'll be targeting, which is the high upfront costs and the high risk of switching. And we thought that the product and service we could offer, which is leasing with a full package, so we would provide maintenance plans,
we would also provide charging stations along with a package. We felt that this service could target their pain points because when you're paying on a monthly basis, you're really reducing your upfront costs. And when you're leasing a vehicle, you don't have this long-term tie-in risk. So then we were able to generate our customer archetype based on this, which is facilities vice president. Everyone we talked to was male and above 40. They care about keeping their campus running, and this involves having their vehicles mobile all the time so that they could transport their tools to wherever they needed to be to fix whatever needed to be fixed. And they buy from fleet shows. They look at, some of them have government contracts as well, and they also look at the internet and car magazines. And who influences them? People like the sustainability office, and of course your staff who gives you feedback about the vehicles. So we want to try and help Joe Stevens fulfill his jobs while still being clean and making his sustainability office happy. So based on everything that we've learned, we managed to condense our very convoluted business model canvas over here into 4 key value propositions and very specific customer segments who we would go to. And the good thing about this is that we can match up our customer segments with our value proposition. So for example, reducing emissions from vehicles would very specifically apply to the sustainability officers, and things like reducing upfront costs would specifically apply to procurement officers. And because we have a strong customer archetype as well, we can really target the exact sales channels that we know that they buy from, which are, I mentioned earlier, fleet shows, web sales, and direct sales. And the thing we like about this is that our revenue streams are also very straightforward. It's just the leasing income that we would get. So I hope I've been able to convince everyone here that leasing was a very scalable and sustainable business model because we can target the customer's value propositions. Leasing is also a widespread practice in the industry already, and in fact, I think as of 2015, 75% of consumer electric vehicles sold were leased. And it makes sense in an industry where the technology is always changing all the time. People don't want to be tied into specific models. And the other thing is that universities like Hamilton and UCSD also do already lease vehicles, so we don't have to come up with a whole new structure, a whole new framework for them to purchase or to lease these vehicles. So if we think about doing a startup plan, our first thoughts were that we would target 2 East Coast and 2 West Coast universities. West Coast because the infrastructure, EV infrastructure over there is already more developed. And we were thinking that one way, the easiest way to get money would be just to get a loan to do a startup. However, we are a group of international students from 3 different countries. So we felt like the visa problem to try and run a business here would be a big problem, especially in our current political climate. So we're definitely interested in going back and exploring this area in our home countries. And finally, what we are going to take to the customers would be something, a very simple MVP, which is in 2 parts. One, we would just show them a flyer, which we would probably make look a lot more attractive than this. But we'll show them a flyer that really condenses our value propositions for them in a few key sentences. And also, we'll bring to them a sort of spec sheet with all the vehicles that we will lease, and we would include information they want, like range, charging time, the amount of the load it can take, and the monthly cost, how much it's going to cost them, and give them a rough lease period. And from there, we can gauge kind of the interest for this market. So thanks, everyone, for giving us your kind attention, and thanks to my team who've worked very hard on this project, and also to the teaching team, especially Jim and Julia, for all your kind advice.
Nice job, guys. I'll start us off with a few comments. So first of all, I really liked your beginning there with your team change with that poor Photoshop thing. I think that was pretty entertaining. I like that. Also, it was neat to hear you talk about your sort of going home to your roots of your technical engineering backgrounds and how you wanted to build an app. It's so common for us to see folks start off with something like that where they're so tempted to get started on the solution. I mean, obviously the answer is going to be an app of some sort, and how you really kind of took home the notion that you really got to understand the problem before you work on your solution. Think about how much time and effort you would have spent building an app on something you thought at first and then realizing that you just would end up with, ditching it. So like the way you sort of built up and told the story of especially how your business model canvas changed over time, the large number of customer segments that you had, how you went out and talked to them, that shrunk down. I'd like to finish with the early version of your business model canvas, juxtaposed with your final one, and really showing how you changed by going out and talking to customers. And speaking of customers, I really like that list of where you had the slide with the specific types of customers, what the customer segment was. That's a real nice way of capturing it. So that was good. I think I'll let the rest of the teaching team jump in. Go ahead.
I would like to say something. That was a really great presentation. I guess Jim said a lot of what I was going to say about how you did a great job taking us through this story, but I think also in terms of taking us through a really good presentation and your confidence in what you were saying, and you didn't have to, you would have these beautiful white slides with 2 words on it, and just being able to speak to that, which makes us want to listen to you and be engaged, which was great. It was a really compelling story. And just having watched you guys each week, how far, and this is for all the teams, how far you guys came. I hope you realize, just in terms of not just your technology, but also your ability as a presenter is pretty amazing to see. So kudos. And I guess I had a question. Do you feel what do you feel is the most surprising thing that you've taken away from the class or learned? Is there anything that surprised you about this semester?
So, I think not having enough technology in United States was a new thing for me. I always thought there'll be enough suppliers available. And then we started talking to we had 3 vendors who were actually providing these services here. And they said we don't have vehicles right now. And there is a situation that we will have to go with Chapter 11, because there is a situation where you don't have a sustainable business. And that is where it struck me that it's not just about softwares, and it comes to the manufacturing world where you need to have those things and then have a business that can get you something sustainable. Mm-hmm. So that was very important for me to understand, which I could get it here.
So I think one of the things that stuck out for me for this presentation is that you guys were really focusing on the values that your customers wanted and learning from those from the interviews that you did. So when you were first posed with the problem from your sponsor, you guys went out and immediately found out resiliency was an extra bonus value that they really might care about, that came right out from your interviews from the get-go. So you started right out of the gate. And then when things weren't working out in the middle, when you were talking to sustainability officers and that didn't really gel into a perfect, BMC, you went back to the value proposition canvas for your inspiration. We've identified values firsthand. Let's look and go take from those to put together a new business model that is going to work for us. And so, good job on that. It really came through in your presentation. I liked it a lot.
Great job, guys. And you guys get the award for chasing down your customers, physically running after those DHL trucks. I really like that part of the story. Okay, so next up we have Sun to Wheels. Yes.
This is yours, right?
Yep, right there.
The world is moving to a distributed energy system that is increasingly renewable, clean, and independent. And in this new world, individuals and companies with solar panels, home battery storage, and even electric vehicles can be both producers as well as consumers of energy. And often they will have excess energy that they are unable to sell to others who are looking for clean, green, and cheaper options. So, our task for Hacking for Energy was to find a way to better connect these producers and users of distributed clean energy for our client, SolarCity.
We began by trying to predict the best route forward with grid-produced energy solutions, but due to technical and financial constraints and regulation inhibitors, our team had to pivot from the grid and venture into an off-the-grid sharing platform solution. This path involved using excess energy in electric vehicles powered by solar energy sources combined with a unique battery storage solution that together would create a new idea not yet seen in the marketplace.
We learned that our customers value time and money very differently. In addition, we learned that their willingness to pay for green energy was a lot more elastic than their willingness to travel and spend time. The course also taught us not to take customers' responses at face value. We learned to differentiate between what they say they will do and what they actually will do. Finally, we learned the importance of understanding the day-to-day activities of electric vehicle users. We needed to know things such as where do they charge, how much does it cost them, what activities do they use their electric vehicles for, what is their age range, and where do they get their information from. All of this information affects how and how often our customers will use our products and what value we're actually providing to them.
The agile development methodology our team used this semester saved us 10 times what we would have otherwise spent. On a shoestring budget, our advertising campaign garnered 150 unique website visitors per day and empowered us to build a mobile application prototype that enables EV users to participate in a peer-to-peer energy sharing marketplace. With high hopes, our team is off to Tesla's headquarters to present our startup ideas and bring our dreams to reality.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm John Borg, and I'm working with what we originally called ourselves as the Sustainable Catalyst Group, and we went forward with a brand launch called Sun to Wheels. And our video you obviously have seen, but this is our team. On the end is Alejandra. She dealt with finance, sales. We've got Davis. He's the guy who was hiding in the pod back there, and he's doing marketing policy. And then Jeff did project management and energy policy analysis, and then I was focused on the technology and the strategy for the company. Our corporate sponsor, our industry host, was SolarCity, or Tesla, and our mentor was Joel from the related company. SolarCity came to us with not what I would classify as how GE defined it as an impossible problem, although today, yes, definitely an impossible problem. But I looked at it mostly as a futuristic problem that may not be able to be solved today in the current market. And so we needed to try to figure out how we can become more efficient with the resource utilization that they already have in their highly verticalized business structure, where they create solar panels, they can store energy, and then they have this unique ability to also sort of transport energy through electric vehicles. So we spent a lot of time up front trying to understand what we thought was the solution to this, and at the same time we sort of stepped back because we knew we wanted to do more than just what Tesla wanted us to do or SolarCity wanted us to do. We wanted to just keep pushing to try to transcend our particular industry host's problem and look at this as sort of a global issue. There is a lot of inefficiency in the way that energy is transported from the grid to the consumers, and then that was what we were really trying to focus on, mostly as other students have sort of attested, because we wanted to do CO2 reduction emissions. Our first idea was, oh wow, let's just go to be Uber. We'll be the Airbnb of the energy sector. And this was challenging for me in particular because I know that there's a lot of regulation and difficulties within the energy sector in and of itself, but then to take this model and to try to move energy around in a way that's never been done before, it was a very complicated process. But we were tasked to really look at this closely, and given the unique vertical integration that Tesla has with electric vehicles and with storage and the ability to produce with their solar panels, we really did think that this is possible, that it's not been done yet, but that there are some key technology changes that need to happen. So we very quickly dove deep into the R&D department at Tesla, and then concurrently we went out and did many interviews. We pulled off 126 interviews over the period of the term, and we differentiated our interviews between consumers who would be using our platform, which was the electric vehicle users, from people who would be providing the power on the other side, which would be the hosts or the charging stations. And then there are these affiliate or network partners that would be involved, like the automobile manufacturers or the green lots, EVgo's. These people would be also involved in the platform that we would be producing. And then there are these other influencers, you know, the California regulatory policy people, the people in DC who are pushing federal tax incentives for the electric vehicles. And then, of course, we had our mentors and our experts, you know, such as Travis Bradford, who we could continuously annoy. So I think we're up to a first pivot, is that right?
We're up to our first pivot. And as John mentioned, we want it to be the Airbnb, we want it to be Uber, that everyone loves to hear. It's lucrative, it's sexy, it's something new, it's something that we all want it to be a part of so we can maybe make money, move the project forward, be successful. But not everything turns out as planned. We used our customer interviews to call and speak with actual homeowners who currently had electric vehicles. These homeowners, we were hoping to learn from them, see if they were interested in potentially sharing their charging infrastructure with other people who were looking to charge their electric vehicles. But from that, we learned that that was not going to be a viable option. This was due to the fact that many homeowners were uncomfortable with the idea that some stranger might be parked in their garage in their driveway for 4 to 5 hours while it took them to charge on their level 2 charger. So we quickly moved away from this on week 2 and kind of focused more on commercial properties. During the commercial properties, we looked at things such as grocery stores, libraries, office buildings, even airports, where this could give another option for EV drivers to charge away from their homes. We thought this was a great idea. This kind of took away from that uncertainty, that awkwardness that might be actually at the home, and gave options for people to charge away from their homes. And from there, we decided to kind of do more research into actual charging locations away from the homes. These, like I mentioned, were the airports, were the industries, were the office buildings, were retail locations. But with this kind of idea of the customer interviews, we quickly learned that there were a lot of barriers that could come up from these charging structures within the airports, within the office buildings, within the retail spaces, such as kind of trouble with structures, with infrastructures within these actual facilities moving forward. So we had to pivot one more time, and kind of then let me step back a second. From those two original ideas, we were heavily reliant on the grid. These charging structures would pull energy that was directly from the grid, whether it be at someone's home or actually the infrastructure such as like the Trader Joe's, the grocery store, the office buildings. And from that, we decided that we needed to move past the grid and look at a sustainable option that would not take into the grid, that would allow kind of this more peer-to-peer energy sharing technology for customers moving forward.
So by about week 5, we had talked to a lot of different players, customers, and influencers in the whole potential energy sharing ecosystem. And we were looking 10 years into the future sometimes, imagining autonomous vehicles. It was kind of exciting, but it was also very frustrating for everyone involved. And I think it took Julia maybe 2 or 3 weeks to say focus on your primary customer and what you can do now. And just to show you from the business model canvas, we had lots of customers, lots of value propositions. But through the course, we really weren't thinking about it this way, but we were in a multi-sided market, and we were looking at too much at once. So we needed to decide, given the limited time we had, which side to look at and to build up and to actually develop an MVP for. And you can see it's got a lot smaller the next week. And we chose EV users, EV drivers, because that is a really growing market. And it's also one where we could collect a lot of data much more quickly than trying to get, figure out who's in charge of solar procurement at this or that host site or corporation. So it became pretty fun to learn about the different customers. There's all sorts of EV users, but through research and the customer interviews, we kind of narrowed it down to 3 environmentalists, frugal travelers, those who bought EVs because they wanted to save money in the long term, and then tech-savvy people who just want to get the latest Tesla. And also looking back at our business model canvas, we had to figure out what we can do now and what we can do in the future. We were also struggling with that. You know, and again, the teaching team was like, what can you do in the next, 3 months? And, we looked at it, and we can provide value propositions of access to clean energy and, the value of having more increased resiliency and energy independence, which were values important to a lot of these groups, but more important to environmentalists. So many of them had bought electric vehicles, and many did not have the opportunity to charge them with green, clean energy. And another, as we kept digging deeper and deeper into this customer unit, we kind of had an aha moment where, there were some electric drivers with solar energy at home or access to green energy through their home charging, and those that did not. And we found quite a distinction between those with access to green energy. They were less willing to travel and alter their daily life. So then we even segmented it a little bit more. And the two things that are most important is, would they pay and would they travel? We got a lot of responses saying, I would do this or that. It's an imperfect, we can never tell for sure, but we started to try to figure out, are they actually doing behavioral changes in their day-to-day lives? So we started asking them, do you actually recycle? What are you doing? And, a lot said, I do this and that. It's, an imperfect thing, but some data points to show that a lot of them are committed to behavioral changes. So I think we're next.
So through our customer interviews, we found that our customer archetypes, what they really value is renewable energy-powered electrical vehicle charging. So even though we found this through our interviews, we wanted to know more, and we created a website called Sun to Wheels, accompanied by a Google AdWords campaign for a period of 25 days from February 26th till March 23rd. And initially, all our website offered was information about us and the option to download an application that wasn't existent. Surprisingly, we got 2,641 unique visits and 49 hits to download our inexistent application. Besides that, we also got an array of inquiries, such as that from Lindy from Sacramento, California, who really wanted to know where she could locate our charging stations in the I-5 from Sacramento to Redding. We eventually interviewed Lindy, and she told us she would be absolutely willing to pay between 10% to 20% more for renewable energy charging versus traditional electrical vehicle charging. Other insights we got through this website were the location of these customers, and what we found is that they're mostly located in California and in the DC area. And from there on, what we did is we targeted our interviews to these geographical areas. So our interviews from there on were mostly in California and in the DC area.
So taking the analytics that we got from the brief sort of vaporware run we did online, we then looked at our customer acquisition costs, and what we found is within 30 days we actually had an ability to convert our cost per click almost in half. And so what we saw is that by looking at certain geographic areas and targeting certain keywords like climate change or tax incentives based on certain locations, that we could very quickly get to these customers. So we needed to sort of combine these analytics with their traditional, generic forms of, AdWords and media and social campaigns, but also with partner alliances. So then we started thinking, all right, well, let's just build an app. So I went to work doing a prototype, and I built an app, and we started taking in all the data that we had gotten from our customer interviews. And immediately, we had to differentiate ourselves in the two-sided market. So when you come to the app, you're either a provider or you're a consumer. But of course, in some instances, a person can be a provider and a consumer, so they become this prosumer, which is what made things so much more complicated for us. We then, of course, had to look at very closely what's the most important thing for these people. And they want to know, where can they get clean energy? Not just some dirty fuel. They want to get something that's really good for them in sort of their lifestyle choice. And then there were some other added features that we built into the app that's, sort of like CO2 savings as a result of what they've done. And then they can do some filtering based on, the costs at a certain station versus another station, or, whether or not there's grocery stores nearby, that sort of thing. Our next steps with the MVP, we're going to take it a little bit further in the prototyping, and then we're going to go out into the market and sort of do some testing in the field. We're going to find out, how far will people actually go? Will they go 5 miles out of the way? Will they go 10? Will they go 20? Will they actually pay 5, 10, 20% more actually for their energy because it's clean and green? And then, of course, other location preferences. Do they want to go to Whole Foods? Are they really juiced up about the airport? Will they actually just do this, when they're at the office? In addition to that, our next steps are that we need to take a lot of what we've done and we need to create some deliverables for Tesla and SolarCity. We've got a market analysis report that we'll produce for them, competitive analysis, some financial modeling. In addition, we'll probably be doing some psychographic and some geographic location targeting. And then, of course, because we believe that we've got a little something going here, we're going to probably start looking for raising capital. Over the next few months, we've got some ignition grant opportunities and some seed funding that we're going to pursue. But we're very targeted on the pilot projects that we're seeking. One of the vaporware responses that we got off the website was actually shockingly interesting in that it's a medical group in New England that has about 25 different locations, and they believe that we have the ability to come in and make green, clean charging stations for them. And of course, we can't do any of that. So we might need to get some money to be able to help them. And of course, we're going to be now going to Tesla to talk about that with them. May 26th, we should be on location to talk with the software team. Rakesh, hi. We'll see you soon. The R&D department and the finance team to sort of figure out what they want, what we've done, is it of value to them, and where can we go next.
Any questions, or just dive in? Go for it. Okay. First of all, great presentation. I really enjoyed talking with you guys over the course of the semester. I think we had several kind of calls that were usually late night for me after the baby went to bed. And I just really want to commend you. I think the initial problem statement was definitely a very interesting one and a little bit futuristic in terms of today's market. And I just think that you embrace that challenge head on, and then we're also able to take that and dial it back to some of Julia's comments and my comments about, like, okay, if that's the future we're seeing, what is the problem today that we can solve? And then that way we can be around in the future when those bigger issues come out. And I don't think that's necessarily something that is very easy to do, and I think you guys did a really great job with it. So, good work.
Just to add on, so obviously your project has come a long way, but I think you guys as a team have come a long way as well. You are one of the few teams that really did everything together, and we could tell that. You were on interviews together. All of you came to our office hours as a group. You presented, each and every one of you. So I want to commend you on your teamwork, because I think it really shows. I think we were pretty hard on you guys in the beginning. I think, yeah, you guys probably got it the worst. In part, that was because you were having a hard time communicating what your idea was. In part because of what Blake was saying, that it was kind of a futuristic idea you were trying to solve. But throughout the semester, I think you guys just got better and better at distilling your thoughts down into something that's easily communicable to us as an audience. And I think your presentation today really reflects that. It was very clean, very easy to understand, and it shows that you've just come a very long way, not only with your project, but with your other soft skills and as a team as well. So great job, guys.
Thanks, thank you.
Last but not least, Aggregan.
Hello. Can everyone hear me okay? All right. As Julia said, we're last, but we certainly hope not least of our classmates today who have presented. We are Aggregan. We're going to talk about energy data today. Aggregan, the product we're developing is a geospatial energy data aggregating tool that collects and analyzes data that's beneficial to the project analysis process. Now, that's a jam-packed sentence, but throughout the story today, you'll hear in great detail what we've developed and the journey we've taken to get there. Before we get into what we're doing, a little bit about who we are. Our team of 5 hails from 4 continents, so we have some diversity there. We're very proud of that. And we've spent a great deal of time together this semester and this year, in fact, really interviewing very many people and understanding the landscape that we were exploring with our challenge. But before we get into that, you've heard a lot about the clean tech space today, of course, but a moment's glance at the actual marketplace we're trying to address. If you look at the clean tech space and look at investment in renewable energy, in the last few years, we've seen that there's roughly $50 billion invested in clean tech. And to be more specific, there's predictions from Bloomberg that show that more than half of that is going towards wind and solar specifically. And so we really see our market opportunity dealing with investors focused on wind and solar. And we're going to tell you now how we're going to do that. The story of Agrogen can be told in 3 acts. We started off talking about markets, then we moved to pricing models, and lastly we came to mapping where we are today. But before we launch into the story, just a brief moment at the core of where we started. Our problem statement, as presented by IBM, part of it is excerpted here. At the core of the problem, we were looking at how to assign value to DER assets, to distributed energy resources. How to do that effectively. How to assign value to the contributions of these assets and have a better understanding of how there should be transactive energy and transactive economics regarding those assets. Now, to begin the story, we'll bring up Barbara to tell us a little bit more about our Act 1.
So, as Julian mentioned, we started with a statement which was very focused on the price of the DR, and we thought that the best way to have a price, it was to have a market. However, DR are very difficult to bring to the market for 2 main reasons. The first one is that there are many of them, so if each individual has a solar panel on his roof, then utilities have to deal with all of them, and it takes a lot of time for a small amount of electricity, so it's not very interesting for them. And the second reason is that they are not very reliable, and the reliability of the electricity is something which is very important for utilities. So for those 2 main reasons, they are difficult to bring to the energy market. That's why we came up with this idea of the market with the utilities, the investor, and the DR. But the DR owners would bundle together to sell together the electricity to the utilities. Like that, utilities would not have to deal with many DR, and this source of energy would be much more reliable. So we arrived with this business model canvas, and we focus more on 2 parts, the customer segment and the value proposition. So the the customer segment, we have the DR owners, the utilities, and the investors. And so for the value proposition, we have the market with the bundle and the price. So as you can see, most of the value proposition are more features than really value proposition, but we learned through the semester how to make real value proposition and not feature. So we went out and we test this idea with customers. However, many challenges appear, and that's why we decided to go to the Act 2.
So the Act 2 is basically our models. But it was a really complex system, and we were warned since the beginning by our interviewees. If you look at the quotes, they say, there is a sea of variability. It's a complex system. There's a swamp of resources. Actually, if you could see, there is an image of a patent one of our mentors sent us. It was very hard to distinguish. So we decided to change the game. We underwent a team reorganization. We brought in our team, our skills, and we reconsidered our direction. So we decided to really think of what we went through and think about our framework. It was really too complex, so we decided that it was not working. We needed to simplify our product and the data that we were going to give to the grid players, and we decided to focus in price and in the pricing people. So this was our MVP at that moment, the one that we created. We had investors to one side. We got energy sources, the regulation that oversees the entire system, and the utilities. And we decided to position ourselves in the middle. We were basically those lenses. What we wanted to offer was a set of lenses that will help investors see clearly through the energy market and understand the pricing rate. However, who needs it? And that was a challenge that we stumbled across during our interviews. We got interview 30. The CEO of Alex said, we don't need a pricing model. With Julian, we had an interview with the VP of Con Ed, and he basically told us, you will be lucky if you could finish your project with a simple economic model. And that was actually kind of heartbreaking. So, after that, James proposed to have a meeting. I remember it was Sunday afternoon outside the business school to develop a who, why, what model and really restructure our idea. So that's when we decided to narrow our focus. We decided to stay with our customer segment. We decided to stay with pricing data, but to provide a comparison. And that's where we come into the next.
So we've gone through 2 ideas, and we're only halfway through the semester. So we took this meeting, and we started picking apart all of our interviews. We started doing some more interviews, trying to find the signal and the noise. And we started to notice a theme came out, that there's not a lot of clarity around the geographic variation in available energy data. In particular, we had one interviewee say that it seems to be intentionally obfuscated, that someone doesn't want this data to be clear, but we found that it was out there. It's available, but there just isn't a platform for it. So we made it. We created this map here, which shows electricity prices from investor-owned utilities across the country. The darker colors are higher prices, lighter colors, lower prices. As you can see, there's a lot of empty space there. That's where the publicly owned utilities would fit in. We have more data to fill that in. But it's a first step in the right direction. And this is all well and good, but what do we do with this, right? We want to show this to people. We want to get their input, see what they think of it. So we put it online, aggregate.co. You can check it out after the presentation. And we're going to take this around. We're going to show it off to people, and we're going to be networking as much as we can to get their feedback, see what they like, what they don't like, and build a product that we know will meet all of their needs. But we felt that this one map wasn't quite enough. We wanted to have more things to test, so we created another prototype. This one, we changed the way we map it out. Instead of points, it's a continuous mapping system. We created this interactive feature where you can see the list of data points on there. We changed the color scheme. And we're going to probe our customers about what they like, what they don't like, to make sure that we make the best product for them. And a key part of that is understanding what kind of data do they need. We know pricing data is obviously important, but we started hearing a lot about policy information. People need to know, our power purchase agreements available and what kind of grid infrastructure is there. We even had one interviewee, number 91 down there, saying that the one thing that's really missing is such a database that can combine pricing and policy information. So this is where our product is right now. But this kind of begs the question, as a business, where are we now?
And where are we now? So taking us through into the next part of our presentation, we want to develop a proposition that identifies who are our customers, what are their needs, and what do we hope to provide them with. Now, we aim to target renewable energy project investors and developers who are looking to develop renewable energy projects. Now, ordinarily, they'd have to go through large sets of data and information in order to formulate their assessments. This runs the risk of having to scout projects potentially suboptimally and also go through large sets of information which could be expensive to even acquire. Now, what we aim to do and provide is a centralized platform that aggregates energy information, and in a centralized platform that will be layered, as my teammate James mentioned, either providing a mapping tool with pricing information and policy, basically a centralized energy data toolkit that is simplified and also ready for our energy investors and developers to go into. How do we aim to find them? Now, our customer outreach would be through traditional channels such as email outreach, social media, etc., word of mouth. But actually, at these conferences that we've identified in the presentation, we find that we can best showcase our product. either through, the New York Energy Forum, etc., and the Bloomberg New Energy Finance. Some of what we'll need in the form of capital will come through physical capital, such as a workspace, etc., financial capital, naturally, this to be acquired through seed capital from angel investors, human capital, and some of the skills that we've identified that we will require to take our proposition forward, such as advisors, more technical expertise, such as data specialists, marketing, and the like. And finally, intellectual capital, web spaces, data mapping tool development, etc. Now, going further into the next side of our presentation, the financing obviously naturally requires money to go forward. Based on our financial model, we've calculated the optimal number of customers in order to break even at 18 whilst charging them $27.40 a day. And I'll hand over to my teammate to take us through on what is next.
Thank you, Lebo. And thank you, everybody else. We've told you the story of Agrogen. We've told you where we are now, and as Lebo mentioned, we're looking ahead. Now, one of the critical things that we've really learned, and we've alluded to it as well, is that the investment process and looking at renewable projects really rests on these four pillars, this pyramid of resources. And at the core are natural resources. Those are the key things that investors are looking for. They need to know the wind, they need to know the solar radiance. Then there's the financial considerations and policy. Above that, you have the people element, and what are the social considerations and social economic incentives. And only after all of that is covered is technology a small tip of the pyramid here. And so with an understanding of what layers are involved, we went out to seek what sort of layers we can actually address and add on to this pricing data that we've identified. And there are many, many layers that are of interest and that fall within those four categories. And we've already spoken about one, about pricing, but there are three others that we are looking forward to working with and looking at in greater detail. Modeling future demand, looking at policy in greater depth, looking at the societal needs, and really taking some of this data that perhaps is more qualitative and finding ways to quantify that and map that as well, which we believe will be a very useful new element. And what's left, the end of the semester, we're looking ahead to the future. And what we have at this point, we've already mentioned layers, which we're going to look at in greater depth. Competition, we're going to continue tracking what other mapping tools and other energy data tools are providing and seeing how we are continuing to add value. And there's, of course, the continuation of speaking to our customers, understanding their needs and understanding how our development is going to fulfill that. And lastly, in addition to the administrative elements of putting together a company and transitioning out of the class, there's the fundraising, which Lebo alluded to as well. And we've already began the conversation with PowerBridge to help us define how to drive our funding needs and get this project moving forward. And when you get a chance, please do visit our website, agrogen.co. And at this point, we have just our website platform. You can read a little bit more about what we're thinking about, how we're doing it, look at some of the solutions. And hopefully soon, we'll have you logging in and getting access to the energy grid data of tomorrow. Thank you very much. Any questions, comments?
Did anyone from the audience have a question first? Nope. Oh.
Yes, sir. You're welcome to give them a call and ask them. We had a very good communication with them in the beginning of the semester, and there are other projects that they're working with, but they haven't been so involved with this since then. Other questions?
I would like to just make a quick comment. I wanted to say I believe you guys were given one of the hardest problem statements at the beginning, combined with one of the hardest things to convey. Like, it's a pretty complicated concept. And you did a really wonderful job today, like breaking it down. It's still complicated, but it was like, I get it. And that I say kudos to you. And you did a lovely presentation. All of you guys are great presenters. So just congratulations, because it was really nice.
Thank you, Andrea.
Really great job, guys. Yeah, like Andrea was saying, you definitely had one of the most complicated problem statements. So I commend you on your bravery for, first off, picking that problem statement to address. And then you ended up pivoting into a sector that's very different from what the other teams were doing, this financial service providers as your customer segment, which also takes a lot of bravery to really dive into this sector that you really knew nothing about. So I commend you on that. I also am just very impressed by your progress. I mean, the fact that you can potentially break even with only 18 customers is very exciting. And so I look forward to seeing what you guys do in the future, and we at PowerBridge will be happy to support you. So we look forward to continuing to work together.
All right, I'll jump in very quickly since we're trying to wrap up here. But I really like that you had all those value propositions at the beginning that you realized were just features. And that's one of the things that we see the teams learn by coming out with these neat ideas for features and realizing it's just not the things that people are going to break out their checkbook and pay for. So glad to see you make that transition. I like the quotes from your customers, especially the one that was sort of provocative, so you had to make sure you didn't identify who it was, but it helped you in your learning, which was great. I also like, back to my sadistic ways, that you guys were heartbroken also. We love to see the teams go way down to the lows and then come back and really feel good about themselves. So with that, I'll let somebody else chime in and wrap this up. Dave.
Yeah, sure. I can't wait to see what happens with your MVP when you launch it. You guys concluded you could get break even with 18 customers only paying a little bit a day, and it sounds like from your customer interviews, you may be able to just put up a site and find those people right away. That's an amazingly lean, fast startup that you guys, created during this course. So kudos to that. I'm excited to see it happen.
And since you're the last one, I think we'll all say a word. We spent several hours on the phone over the course of the semester. I'm not convinced that I added any value to your team because, to Andrea's point, it was a very interesting problem, to say the least. But what just constantly impressed me was your drive and your resolve to find a solution. It blew me away every time I got off the phone with you guys, and I always shared that with the teaching team. And then I think what excites me now is, even from our last conversation, I feel like you discovered kind of that nugget that, like, oh, this is the little piece that we think is most interesting. And then you took it and said, okay, now what else can we do? And you actually are building up from that. I think that just, again, shows the drive and the interest that you guys have and have continued to have, and it was just really impressive for me. So good job.
Great job, guys. Okay, so we just want to thank you all for coming. We're going to wrap up. We have some refreshments, drinks in the back. We'll have the space till about 3:45, and then we'll be migrating across the street to Bernheim Schwartz for our continued happy hour. I'd just like to ask the teams, industry hosts, mentors who are here to come up, because we want to do a class picture, and the teaching team as well. So you guys can come up and you can join the reception.
Thank you to the teams. We really enjoyed working with you. It's great to see you go through the trials and tribulations and come out like you did. So thank you for making this fun for us. And please join us at the front.